Welcome to the Career Success Secret Show. I am your host, Mike Tomasello, and I have a question for you, and I really want you to think about it. What do you think is the number one problem in career and job search? And here's a hint. The number one problem in career and job search is something that you control. Little stumped? The funny thing is, almost no one is talking about this. Do you think it's the resume? Do you think it's your LinkedIn profile, your social media posts? Do you think it's the job website that you're using? Well, the news I have for you today is the number one problem in career and job search is actually your lack of clarity. Your lack of clarity. So, for the purposes of today's show, we're going to talk about two different types of clarity. We're going to talk about clarity of what you want, or the flip side of that, the lack of clarity of what you want, and then also the clarity of understanding what the hiring manager wants. So, regardless of where you are in your career, if you're actively job searching, most of the examples today are going to be a really great fit for you. But even if you're not job searching, even if you're content in your career or discontent in your career, but you're not looking to do a job search anytime soon, this episode is going to be a really important thing for you to listen, take notes on, and think about. And so if you need to pause that recording, jot down some notes, I highly encourage you to do so. So let's think about the impact in terms of when you don't have clarity. And I'm primarily talking about when you don't have clarity of knowing what you want. So if you don't know what you want, you're going to be more likely to have a generic resume. If you don't know what you want, you're going to be more likely to waste time and energy on things that you don't want. When you're not clear on what you want, you're going to be more likely to perform poorly in your interview or perform poorly in your job. When you are unclear on what you want, you're going to be more likely to end up in a job that you hate or end up in a job that saps your energy and makes you so exhausted that it's hard to even do the things you love and enjoy when you get home and on the weekend because you're still recovering from your job. So last but not least, a higher risk of job turnover, whether that's you getting laid off or whether you're choosing to look for a new job because you found yourself in a situation, and maybe you found yourself into a situation over and over again that doesn't serve you. Not the right boss, not the right company, not the right products, or not the right job duties. So as you can imagine, this really compiles. So I invite you to get really clear on what you want. And so for those of you not conducting a job search, because sometimes we don't talk about people that are happy in their careers enough. When you are in your job search, you should be thinking about the next step, even when you're happy, even when you're content. The benefit to thinking about what you want next when you're happy and you're content is your brain's going to be more likely to think properly. Your heart and your intuition is going to be more likely to kick in, and you're going to be more likely to be inspired instead of coming from a place of fear or instead of coming from a place of resentment, which can really mess with and sap your intuition because you go into survival mode and you're thinking, man, I got to solve this problem really quickly. So when you're content and when you're happy about your job is a perfect opportunity to evaluate what's next. And so everyone's a little bit different in that. Everyone has different priorities in terms of what they want to get out of their job and get out of their career. But the majority of you listening to this are ambitious people that want to get more out of your job, whether that be more enjoyment, whether that be doing a higher percentage of job duties that you love, whether that be getting a promotion, or whether that just be a salary raise. So even something as simple as making more money and a salary raise, the clearer you are on how much you're ready to earn, the more likely you are going to find a plan to get there faster. You're going to be more likely to research what are the best ways to get a raise. You're going to be more likely to have better and more meaningful conversations with your boss and other key stakeholders because you're very clear, even if it's a year from now, you're very clear that eventually you're going to want a raise. When we only think about what we want, or we have that lack of clarity, our brain doesn't know that you want to be working on that solution. We need to be proactive. We need to be intentional. We need to be mindful of setting that intention in terms of what we want for ourselves so our brain knows where to go. To add a metaphor for it. So let's say you're choosing a place for the first time. You're forced to move away from where you grew up and you have to choose a new place to live. Or if that's a little too scary for you, you need to take a vacation, and you need to take a vacation this winter. That's right. I'm suggesting you take a winter vacation for the purposes of this metaphor. You're taking a vacation, or you're thinking about where you want to live. Most people, when they're thinking about their career or their job, are very good about identifying what you don't want. Most of you are masters at identifying what you don't want. This is what I don't want in a boyfriend. This is what I don't want in a girlfriend. This is what I hate about my boss. This is what I don't like about what I'm being paid. But most of you are not. Most of you never take the time to flip that and instead focus on what you do want. Going back to the vacation example, or going back to the where in the world you want to live example, and I'm going to, for the purposes of this, keep it to the 50 states, just so I don't have to say all the options out loud. But for you, you could pick 3 random countries, or you could pick 3 provinces within your favorite countries, whatever, three cities within your countries, whatever makes sense for you. So what you don't hear people do when they're choosing a place to live, or what you don't hear people do when they're choosing where they want to take a vacation, is you don't hear them start with what they don't want. Man, I really don't want to live, or I really don't want to take a vacation this winter in Alaska, North Dakota, or Wyoming. Now, some of you might want to go to Wyoming. Maybe you're a big skier and you want that winter, but let's assume for the purposes of this that you're not a skier. Or just narrow it down to Alaska and North Dakota, whatever floats your boat. So you made some progress by identifying what you don't want. You don't want Alaska, you don't want North Dakota, but all of these other options are still available to you. There's still 47 different states or 48 different states available to you. If you were looking at countries, there's even more options available to you. If the number of cities in the United States alone, more options than you could potentially think about, or would take you a heck of a long time. So if you're just focusing on what you want, you're going to have a trouble ever making a decision. And to give another geographic example, the more specific you are about what you want, the more likely you're going to be able to go on that journey, and go on that journey more quickly. So let's say you did spend some time thinking about what you want, and you decided you really like Miami and you really like Seattle. Well, that's great. At least you've eliminated a bunch of other options. But Seattle and Miami are pretty different. And so if you've hopped in a car or you're getting ready to buy a plane ticket, you're still not at the level of specificity that's going to allow you to get to your final destination. And so job search in a lot of ways works the same way. So the more specific you are in terms of what type of job that you want to be working in, what type of job you want to be applying for, some things I would be focusing on is, 1, what department do you likely want to be in? So do you want to be in marketing? Do you want to be in operations? Do you want to be in finance? Some of you have already figured that out yet and have kind of narrowed it down. But some of you are looking at a variety of different things. Now, I do want to take a step aside and say, hey, you're just deciding what you want for now, or you're just deciding what you want to try next. This does not mean that you are making a decision for the rest of your life and that you can't change your mind later. This is about choosing your first destination or your next destination so that you can start building a plan and you can start taking actions to get somewhere that you think is desirable. You can always be on the way to Miami and decide, I decided I don't want to go to Miami anymore. I want to go to New York City. That's fine. Once you're clear on what you want, you can turn the car around. You can buy a different airplane ticket. That's totally fine. But when it comes to job search or it comes to your career, you're probably going to figure out what you want more quickly if you narrow it down and you focus on one thing and you pursue it. And in your act of pursuing it, in your act of doing it, in your act of talking to people about it, in your act about learning about it through job descriptions, you're going to figure out that much more quickly. It's not necessarily where you want to go. And then you can go to the number 2 on your list. Or maybe you realize there's aspects in your number 2 and number 3 that you're no longer attracted to that you learned from pursuing a route. But if you're not pursuing anything, it's really hard to figure out. So one of the things we talked about earlier is the resume. And a lot of people out there, including some very successful people, might be you listening, have a super generic resume. And the problem with a super generic resume, even if you have some decent stuff on there, even if you have the right qualifications, even if you have a lot of the stuff they're looking for or all of the stuff they're looking for, if you've also shoved in a whole bunch of other stuff that's not related to the type of job that you want to be applying for, the type of career that you want to be in, there's going to be a disconnect, and your argument for why you should be the one to get the position is going to be weaker than other people that are much more focused than you. So, and occasionally we talk about in the podcast that in North America, I don't know what it's like in your country. I've heard numbers even crazier than the North American numbers, but in North America, the average job gets 300 applicants. If you like the bigger Fortune 1000, Global 2000, sexy brand name companies, then your competition for each role is potentially 1,000 applicants, 2,000 applicants. And so being able to carve into a level of detail and relevance on your resume, your marketing materials, your LinkedIn profile, the quality of the emails that you send out, the quality of your interview answers, they're going to be that much better when you have focus. So one of the examples I wanted to give to you, and again, everybody listening to this has different interests, different careers, different jobs. So, but it's just an example of the level of knowing what you want in this next opportunity is going to be for you. So you might say, I want to be a senior marketing manager with a focus on social media content creation for a B2B, business to business software company. And the software should either be focused on HR, sales, or marketing software. Maybe you have interest or maybe you have experience in those 2 to 3 areas. And so that makes you more likely to understand those softwares better, or that software is more likely to excite you. Or maybe you prefer thinking about consumers. And individuals, and maybe you're more attracted to business to consumer or B2C, or maybe you're more connected to manufacturing because you live in a manufacturing city and there's more opportunity available, or you're interested in manufacturing because a lot of the people that you grew up with worked in the factory, and so propping up that industry and being a part of that industry is helpful to you. Or maybe you like caring about people and seeing people be healthy. And so, or maybe you lost someone that you really care about. Maybe healthcare is a more interesting area for you. So regardless of the route that's most attractive to you or limited to you based on where you live, maybe you live in a smaller town or a smaller state where you can't be as selective about industry. That's still a level of specificity that you should be aware of Because even if it's determined by your location and not by you, that's still going to have an impact on what you want. That's still going to have an impact on your career materials and marketing materials that you're going to be making. So I said senior marketing manager. You might be entry level. You might be in a different department than marketing. You'll notice a second thing, or an additional thing would probably be more accurate. An additional thing that I suggested is what type of marketing, or what's one of the job duties that you really want to be doing. And depending on the level of your career, that might be determined by a couple of different factors. Maybe there's one job duty and you're super experienced, and there's one job duty that you've always wanted to do. You've sort of done it, but not quite done it. Well, focusing only on roles where you can do that particular duty, that's going to get you a lot more focused. You're going to be a lot more likely to come up with some sort of argument in terms of why you would be good at that job duty or those 2 or 3 job duties. For someone who's a little bit earlier in your career, you might not have the experience yet, or you might be in the midst of a career change. And for those of you in one of those situations, you're focused on what types of work, what types of job duties do you think you might enjoy? Using marketing as an example, and I know tons of you are not in marketing, but using marketing as an example, there's over 200 different types of marketing. There's an infinite amount of different types of engineering positions. There is probably, if there's 200 in marketing, there's probably 500 different types of operations related positions. So you being a little bit more clear on which duties you're a good fit for and which ones you aren't is going to save you a heck of a lot of time, and it's going to allow you to research and write things in a way. So once you get this level of clarity, one of the things that I highly recommend, and this is going to go to the second type of clarity that I mentioned at the very beginning of the recording, and that is clarity in terms of knowing what the hiring manager wants. Not a generic hiring manager, any random hiring manager in the world. No, we want to know the wants and the needs of the person, of people with the job titles that are most likely to be your future hiring manager for what you said you wanted. And those wants and needs are going to be different depending on what you came up with for what you want. Because I guarantee you, even just using the marketing example, a marketing manager in B2B HR software has dramatically different wants and needs than a B2C marketing manager for a manufacturing consumer products company or whatnot. And even if I made the differences between the roles smaller and they were more similar, so just within the tech industry, the wants and needs, even within the tech industry, for that department are potentially going to be different. So you're going to save yourself an insane amount of work, an insane amount of time, and more importantly, you're going to have a much better argument in terms of why they should give you an interview and they should give you the job and hopefully a lot of money to do this job if you've done this thought work and this research and whatnot. So, small little exercise that I recommend all of my coaching clients, all of my job searchers do, but you can do it if you're a career changer and evaluating your career, is to look at job descriptions, but not look at job descriptions to necessarily apply to them right away, but look at job descriptions as quickly as possible and eliminate ones as quickly as possible that are not a good fit for you. And what you're eventually going to do is you're eventually going to get a list of approximately 5 job descriptions. Could be 4 job descriptions, could be 6 job descriptions, but 5 job descriptions is kind of the sweet spot. And you want 5 job descriptions that are similar. When you narrow it down to that, when you look at, I'm noticing that almost all of the job descriptions I'm focused on have operations in the title. Or I'm noticing that the majority of the job descriptions that I'm interested in, or that I'm the best fit for, I'm noticing the majority of them are in manufacturing or in consumer products. take that as a sign that that's probably a good focus area for you. So that's the purpose of narrowing it down to the 5. Now, once you have 5 that are similar types of companies, if you live in a large city or highly populated area, I do recommend for those of you in bigger cities that you do narrow it down by industry. If you live in a smaller city, let's say 1,000 people or less, then you don't you might have limited options in terms of your industries. And so you might not have to narrow down your approach as much. But if your city has a very diversified economy, I do recommend trying to incorporate a specific industry into your focus, because it's going to make you have that argument way stronger. People that know they have a lot of insurance companies in their city, they're going to write a heck of a better email. They're going to write a heck of a better resume if they make the conscious connection. Well, I don't really care what industry I'm in. There seems to be a lot of opportunity in insurance. Let me go read and study job descriptions in the insurance industry, and you're going to be a lot more effective in terms of landing jobs, because you're going to incorporate those keywords. You're going to incorporate those specialized job duties and lingo into your marketing materials, whether it be an email, whether it be a verbal interview answer, or whether it be a LinkedIn profile or a resume. Anytime I'm referring to your career or job search materials or marketing materials, I'm usually talking about those things and maybe a couple more. So I'd love to know what you think at this time. Do you have that level of clarity in terms of what you're focused on? Do you have the level of clarity in terms of whether you prefer small companies or big companies? If you're indifferent, have you done the research to see where the most opportunity is? Have you done the research to see where there's less competition if you're indifferent? Again, this is only if you're indifferent or you're starting out or you don't have a lot of experience. Your fastest way to getting hired is when you're leveraging as much of your experience and knowledge that you already have. This is why career changers struggle so much in the job search, because they don't realize it's not just about being at an equivalent level. It's not just about having transferable skills. It's about your background is being compared to everyone else that's applying, and they have an advantage over you. And so you need to go through whatever you need to go through to overcome that disadvantage or overcome the advantage that the other person has. A couple quick tips for the rest of the episode before we wrap up. If you are having trouble narrowing down the job descriptions that you think are a good fit for you, again, for the research and analysis part that I was talking about, or you're having trouble, or maybe you're not even at that stage and you're like, man, I kind of have experience doing this. I've been a jack of all trades. And by the way, I have been a jack of all trades. I have probably done at least 5 different career changes or 7 career changes. I don't recommend doing that unless you really have to. The power of being intentional. A lot of times you can avoid jumping around like that. That just happened to be the magical path for me. So the tip I would give you if you're having trouble narrowing it down is one of the following. So the first option, which I highly recommend, but the first option isn't good for people that are desperate. So if you've reached a point in your job search or your career where you need to make money fast, you need to get a job as quickly as possible, you cannot wait a whole nother 3 months or 6 months or worse, then don't do this first one. This first one is for people that are a little bit more financially stable, have money saved up, maybe they're still currently working, or they're being proactive and they're thinking about what they want in their search next. Or maybe you're finishing school and you have some time to think about this during school or vacation or whatever. So the first option for narrowing things down, and I really, really love this one, the first option is follow your highest excitement. follow your highest excitement. Now, some of you might be a little skeptical and might be like, well, Mike, I'm not really excited about anything. And I would argue, well, that's probably not true. Maybe you're excited about video games. Maybe you're excited about sports. Maybe you're excited about reading. Maybe you're excited about working with numbers or analysis. There's usually something that we're interested in that we're just not giving ourselves full credit or permission to be interested in. So follow your highest excitement. If you know that your one option is doing one thing, then you don't need this process. But this is for people that are trying to narrow down what they want. So follow your highest excitement. Well, Mike, but I'm excited about a lot of things. Good problem to have. So I kind of like the idea of HR. I kind of like the idea of talent acquisition. I kind of like the idea of marketing. Kind of like the idea of sales. Kind of like the idea of content creation. Well, when you take a step back and you think about each one of those one at a time and you breathe and you tap into emotion and not just think, but you feel which one feels slightly better to you. It's not for some of you, it's totally normal to be excited by a lot of things. And if you're not at the level of excitement, what is the area that you are most interested in? So, what is your highest level of interest? It's better if you can have a little bit of a stronger positive emotion attached to it. But hey, if you've been through a rough time in your life, or you feel like you haven't been able to pursue your passions or your interests or your excitement, then it's going to be a while before you're able to cultivate that. And so the signs are going to be a little bit more subtle for you if that's the case. Or you've been through a lot of heartache or struggles, whether it be in your career or in your life, the signs are going to be a little bit more subtle in terms of what your excitement and your interest is. That's why it's your highest excitement. And that could be, well, I'm only 25% interested in this, but the other things I'm looking at, I'm only 24% interested in. So that small percentage higher is a sign that something's likely going to bring you. And then as you learn more information, as you do more research, as you talk to people, as you network, as you interview at places, maybe after your next job, you will get more information that will fuel whether or not that was your highest excitement or whether you've now learned that it's something else. So it's totally fine not to have it all figured out if you just trust the subtlety there and trust yourself and trust your intuition. Or for those of you that are religious, trust in God or trust in the universe. And that 1% difference, if you listen to your heart, if you listen to it, it will point you in the right direction. Now, for the realists in the room, or for those of you that might not be in the best financial situation, maybe don't have the money saved up for potentially a long job search, if you don't think you can go 3 months without a job, then one of the big factors, and potentially the only factor, is follow your most likely to get hired. Follow your most likely to get hired. So for those of you that have been in the workforce for a while, which is the majority of you, you're most likely to get hired is either what you were doing most recently, because there's a thing that exists in the human psychology called recency bias. You will be judged on paper, on your resume, on LinkedIn, by the job you held or the type of job that you held most recently. So going back and doing as close to that work as possible, or similar work to that, similar level to that, similar industry to that, the less of those things you change, the stronger your argument is going to be in terms of why you're a great fit for that position, thus a greater chance of getting hired and getting hired faster. Also, usually a greater chance of making more money. Depends on a variety of different factors, but that's usually the case. If for whatever reason, the last job you were at was just a horrible fit for you, or it ended poorly or whatever, then maybe the other most likely to get hired is where is the bulk of your experience, where's the bulk of your successes, no matter how small. So those two things, depending on where you're at in terms of your happiness level in your life and your career and also financial stability, those two are the simplest and yet quickest ways to start narrow things down. And I'm oversimplifying this so that you can take action. Some of you might need to do a lot of reading online. Some of you that are extroverts might need to, and I highly recommend, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, that you talk to people in your field, even if you've been working in it for years. Because especially if you've been out of work for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you need to be talking in the lingo. You need to be learning about how things have changed. You need to be learning nuances about how your job is different at one type of company rather than another type of company. And building relationships and having conversations with people can really accelerate that. Plus, if you're figuring it all out, that's going to help you. It's going to help you identify keywords and duties that are going to be more important to your specific hiring manager because you had those conversations. And heck, hopefully some of those turn into career friends or work friends that also introduce you and refer you into places. And if it's close between you and someone else, a lot of times it's going to be able to break the tie and help you get further. So I know I threw a lot of things at you, but in summary, there's two things that are often screwing people up. And even if you are super senior in your career, having that clarity about what you want is so important. Because if you don't know the destination, it's really hard to get the roadmap to get where you're going. It's really hard to know what actions to take if you don't know whether you're going to New York or you're going to Los Angeles. So get clear, or at least narrow it down little by little every week or every day until you're clear on what the next best step is for you. And you don't have to be 100% sure. We're rarely 100% sure. But if you go back and listen to this recording, if you take notes, if you follow your highest excitement, or you follow your most likely, you're going to get to where you want to go, or you're going to figure out the other place you want to go a lot quicker. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would love your comments and questions in terms of what's getting you stuck on career clarity and what types of episodes that you want to see from the Career Success Secrets Show. I'm your host, Mike Tomasello. Thanks for joining Career Success Secrets.